What kind of person survives political purges, years of poverty, public humiliation, and ends up becoming arguably the most powerful leader China has seen since Mao Zedong? Most people would call it impossible. History simply called him Xi Jinping. And here's the fascinating part. His rise wasn't built on one brilliant speech, one dramatic election, or one lucky break. It was built over decades through patience, discipline, calculated silence, and an extraordinary ability to outlast almost everyone around him. If politics were a game of chess, Xi didn't win by making flashy moves. He won by staying on the board while everyone else disappeared. When people imagine powerful leaders, they often picture someone who was born with unlimited privilege, fancy schools, political connections, a guaranteed path to the top. In Xi Jinping's case, that assumption is only half true.
Yes, Xi was born into one of the most influential families in communist China. His father, Xi Zongxun, was one of the revolutionary heroes who helped establish the People's Republic of China alongside Mao Zedong. In today's language, Xi Jinping would probably be described as a political prince, or what China calls a princeling. Sounds like winning the lottery, doesn't it? Well, history had other plans. During Xi's early childhood in Beijing, life looked comfortable. His family lived in government compounds. His father held senior positions inside the Communist Party. The future appeared secure.
Then politics did what politics often does. It changed overnight. In the early 1960s, Mao Zedong became suspicious of many senior officials inside his own government. Xi Zongxun fell out of political favor after being accused of supporting ideas considered dangerous to Mao's authority. Almost instantly, the family's privileged life collapsed. Imagine waking up one morning as the child of a national hero and going to bed as the son of an enemy. That's essentially what happened.
The family lost status. Friends disappeared. Political allies suddenly developed a fascinating new hobby called pretending they had never met you. If you've ever noticed how quickly people disappear when you're in trouble, congratulations. You've experienced politics on a very small scale. Then came the Cultural Revolution in 1966. For many Chinese families, this period became one of the most chaotic decades in modern history. Students organized into militant groups known as the Red Guards. Schools stopped functioning normally. Intellectuals were publicly humiliated. Officials were denounced. Families were torn apart by political campaigns. No one could be completely certain who would become the next target. Today, we often imagine governments operating like giant machines. The Cultural Revolution sometimes resembled something closer to a giant emotional roller coaster, where the tracks were constantly being rebuilt while everyone was already riding it. Xi Jinping was still a teenager. His father was imprisoned. His mother was forced to publicly criticize members of her own family. One of his sisters reportedly died during this chaotic period under circumstances that remain debated by historians. The young Xi himself experienced public denunciations and repeated political humiliation. Instead of growing up inside elite government compounds, he was suddenly learning one of history's oldest lessons. Power is temporary. Reputation is fragile, and politics has an incredibly short memory. Eventually, like millions of urban youths during the Cultural Revolution, Xi Jinping was sent away from Beijing. His destination was Liangjiahe, an isolated farming village in Shanxi province. This wasn't a leadership training program. This wasn't an internship. This wasn't one of those find-yourself gap years influencers love talking about. This was hard rural labor. No modern conveniences, no family connections, no guarantee
he would ever return to Beijing.
According to numerous accounts, the village had no electricity, very limited running water, primitive housing, and difficult living conditions. Xi reportedly lived in a cave dwelling carved into hillsides, similar to many homes common in that region. Picture one of the sons of China's political elite, learning how to carry manure. History has an odd sense of humor.
Many young people sent to the countryside tried to escape. Xi reportedly attempted to return to Beijing early on, but was sent back. Eventually, something interesting happened. Instead of resisting the situation forever, he adapted. He worked alongside farmers. He participated in agricultural labor. He learned local customs. He gradually earned the trust of villagers.
Whether every detail of these stories has become polished over time is something historians continue to debate. Political biographies often become smoother as careers become more successful. That's true in almost every country. But one fact is difficult to dispute. Xi remained in Lianjiahe for years. Those years shaped both his public image and, very likely, his political instincts. Think about the contrast. As a child, he saw the highest levels of Chinese political power. As a teenager, he experienced some of the lowest living conditions in rural China. Very few future national leaders experience both extremes before turning 30. Most politicians spend decades trying to understand ordinary citizens. Xi spent years living among them.
Whether that produced genuine empathy, political calculation, or some combination of both is something scholars continue discussing today. But the experience became central to his later political identity. When Xi eventually rose through the Communist Party decades later, state media frequently emphasized these rural years. The message was clear. This wasn't simply another elite politician. This was someone who understood hardship. At least, that was the narrative. And narratives matter enormously in politics. In democratic systems, politicians build campaign brands. In one-party systems, leaders build historical legitimacy. Different methods, similar objectives. Another fascinating detail often overlooked is Xi's persistence. During his years in the countryside, he reportedly applied multiple times to join the Communist Party.
And he was rejected. Again, and again, and again. Imagine applying for the organization that effectively controlled your country's future, only to hear, thanks, but no thanks. Most people might have given up. Xi didn't. Eventually, after repeated applications and years of labor, he was finally accepted into party membership. That decision would quietly change Chinese history. At the time, almost nobody noticed. History rarely announces itself while it's happening. Nobody standing in that rural village looked at the young Xi Jinping and whispered, "One day this guy will reshape global geopolitics." They were probably more concerned about the harvest. History is funny like that.
The people who eventually change the world often look surprisingly ordinary while they're still waiting for their opportunity. Another lesson emerged from these early years. Visibility can be dangerous. Xi had witnessed what happened to ambitious officials during the Cultural Revolution. He saw powerful figures destroyed almost overnight. He learned that surviving politically sometimes mattered more than standing out politically. Many analysts later argued that one of Xi's greatest strengths became patience. He rarely rushed. He seldom became the loudest person in the room. He advanced step by step. In an era where social media rewards instant reactions, this approach almost feels alien. Today, we're surrounded by people trying to become famous overnight. Xi spent decades becoming almost invisible. Ironically, that may have helped him become indispensable later.
Political systems often reward reliability more than charisma, especially systems where internal trust matters more than public popularity. By the time the Cultural Revolution ended following Mao's death in 1976, China stood at a crossroads. The country had experienced years of political turmoil. Economic development had largely stalled. Millions of lives had been disrupted. The next generation of leaders faced an enormous challenge. How do you rebuild a nation after years of ideological chaos? For Xi Jinping, the answer wasn't immediate. He wasn't suddenly promoted. He wasn't welcomed back as political royalty. Instead, he began something much slower. He pursued education. He entered university.
He started climbing the party hierarchy one position at a time. No shortcuts, no dramatic announcements. Just years of administrative work that most people outside China would never hear about. It wasn't glamorous, but neither is laying the foundation of a skyscraper. Everyone admires the top floor. Very few pay attention to the concrete underneath. And Xi Jinping was still pouring concrete. What makes this stage of his life so important isn't that he gained power. He didn't. It's that he developed a survival strategy. Stay disciplined, stay useful, stay patient.
Never assume today's political reality will still exist tomorrow. Those lessons were learned not in luxurious offices, but in political struggle, public humiliation, and dusty farming villages far from Beijing. The irony is almost cinematic. The boy whose family was nearly destroyed by the Communist Party would eventually dedicate his entire career to strengthening that very party. Whether one sees that as loyalty, pragmatism, conviction, or simply extraordinary political adaptation depends largely on perspective. But one thing is beyond dispute. The years that seemed to destroy Xi Jinping may have quietly forged the political instincts that later helped him rise higher than almost anyone imagined. And as China entered a new era of economic reform under Deng Xiaoping, the young man who had survived one of the country's darkest chapters was about to begin an even more difficult journey. Not surviving politics, but mastering it.